I realize I haven't been entirely clear on this process. So let's talk about the process from start to finish of creating a character for the Left 4 Dead series, because we did this on Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. We've done this on other games as well when I was at Valve. I don't know how they do it now. But so this was a process, and I really enjoyed this because this really included everybody, and also it's a good example of your studio of how do you get feedback when you're small and it's just you, and like how do you solicit people on your team, because the first feedback and the first playtesters are always you, the team, right? And sometimes later people would be like, "Oh man, I heard the playtesters didn't like this. Oh, I hate those playtesters." I'm like, "Oh, that was us. That was us." But okay, so it starts with, "Hey, we're gonna do 4 characters again." There's no, "Hey, it needs to be 2 women or 2 men or this or that." It's just like, let's just start throwing everything up, and that is, like I said, the artists are creating art for ideas that they have, and the writers are creating little snippets of character, and we put those all up on a day, and we all talk about them, and then whatever as a writer I see as a piece of art that I am influenced by or react to, I then go write for it, and the artists then go take some of the snippets and react to that and make art for that. There's no like, "Hey, we have to do this or that." It is like whatever. And normally almost everything gets some reaction, and so somebody does some cover to it, but it's not required. And so, but that tells you already interest, right? Like what's exciting, what's interesting. And so then we just kind of keep going back and forth on that. And then there'll sometimes be like, the one artist really wanted a fireman. He really wanted a fireman. I don't know why. And he just did like a whole bunch of things of firemen. But my thing is like, if you have a character who is a authority, people are going to bow down to that authority just at some point because they're the expert or they have the opinion. And so I don't like to have that in there, but we still have that in the mix. We're still trying it, right? And so there'll be a bunch of these sketches, and then they'll have the little like bio with them maybe, and we'll start talking about these characters. And often the shorthand we use is the heads are famous people, and that's the way to kind of short circuit and go, it's this kind of character. So like Nick was originally Johnny Knoxville, and then eventually we took him off because he really wasn't quite that kind of like troublemaker. And we put those up, and we go in a room, and we put those all up on a board, all over the room. And I think like the Left 4 Dead 2 was entirely a probably 10 by 20 room that was just nothing but concept art. It was beautiful, by the way. And the little descriptions and being like, what do you like, what do you not like. Now everybody in the company can go in there, and they're all given, I think it was like 3 pins or something, and you choose to place a pin on the thing that interests you, what excites you. And you could start seeing groupings of these pins. Now, the pins are a little weird because they're public, and so people like you kind of get a groundswell towards something, but that's fine. It generally works out. And so you have that moment. You're like, then out of that, you then get together and you're like, "Oh, what about this character? What about this character?" And then it's like, "Okay, we have these 3 done. There's this one left. It's between these characters. Which one do we like?" I was talking about like the bartender version of Rochelle versus the assistant producer. And you kind of go back and forth on that. And some people champion one or the other. And then you kind of say, "Okay, these are the 4." And then you go, "Okay, now we have to stop using the famous people's faces, and actually who do we want?" And instead of like doing a whole process of concepting that, why don't we just go get a bunch of art? When we have a bunch of photographs of people, and that's what we do. There's places you go, and there's just endless photographs of people that you go look at, and then you go kind of see more photos. And we kind of start doing it that way. And there's a conversation about it, and everybody, again, is involved. Now, the artists start taking the lead at this point over the characters more than, I think the writers probably in the early stages have more of a say, because we can kind of put our foot down more of like, we don't want to write that character. Kind of. And again, this is always weird talking about this because at Valve, whenever anybody says I or me, even when I do it, like, it's really hazy because it's such a group thing. And so, okay, so then we get these characters, and we finally like, "Hey, this is gonna be Coach, this is gonna be Rochelle. Like, we're gonna go take photos of this." We go down to this session. We actually already recorded the Anacrusis, but they have another studio that is a photo studio, and we would go down, and one of the artists would actually dress the characters, and we'd take photos of them, photos with guns and different things, and like props and stuff, and just try to get a feel for it, right? And it's a lot of like how it's going to influence it, and some of that stuff actually made it into the movie posters. Like those posters were over paintings of those shots. Which is why Bill looks like he's pooping in some of them to me. I don't know. All right, but okay. But so we take that, and we're going back, and then the 3D model or the artists get them into the game at the first blush. And you can kind of see them, and we've never shipped that first version of it. And it's not to say those 3D modelers aren't super skilled or know what they're doing, but they're like the first effort, and it's like there's still a lot of work. This is the thing of like, if you're an indie, then you get an asset, you put it in, and you're like, I'm done. We're here at Valve. There'd be a lot more time with it. It's between the animation, which is actually shared by everybody, so you don't have a lot of variation there, but you do have a lot of variation in the character. And so then you're like, hey, coach, is the wings on him are a little too big, and it just looks weird in the movement of it, and it's kind of janky. Rochelle doesn't look elegant enough. And some of that is like the people we filmed aren't quite what we wanted, and so there's like this transition. But I remember there's an artist at Valve that I jokingly called her the butt artist, because you would go in her office and she would just be like, it wasn't painting just the butt, but it was like, they have the texture open and it's broken out. And it's like a week on the character's lower body and just making the painting and the texture of it make it where it looked better. And she's just so talented of being able to look at this abstraction of it and have it end up being this thing that looked really good. And you would see the character slowly morph over. And you could see this, I think, probably in the trailer of the Left 4 Dead 2 in particular, because that was the hot one coming in that was moving fast. And they would kind of move slightly different. But like, if anyone ever asks about like, oh, the beta character, I don't remember, man, we were always moving, always trying to just get the best one. And then there's some point you're like, hey, this is done, we're going. And now it's just the writing of it. And I think that was always kind of the scary thing for me, is because this whole process came out with these great characters, and then it's just really important that now you have to finish through, you have to execute, and you have to get the writing and the characterization and all of that and bring all these people's work to this point in the game. And like both that satisfying and exciting, and seeing that come together, because then you would see some people like expand out the world and stuff and react to it, and like it was a really fun process. But through all of that process, it is a lot of back and forth with a lot of people, like doing a lot of like company-wide reviews or company-wide look-ats. Anybody could always come up to you and be like, hey, what about? And I almost reacted to somebody had some like woke mind virus BS thing of like how you choose characters. And it's like, no, it is just us continually talking about it and looking at where we're making the game and trying to reflect the people there and what's going on. And like, there is no agenda except trying to make the best possible characters that fit the game, that feel the most natural, so that when you play the game, you're like, yes, they seem like they belong here, and you like them, and you, aspirational is a word we used a lot, and you wanted to live with them. And I think that is something that you see out of the characters, and especially the process at Valve has that be the end result, and I think it's really successful at it. Especially the Left 4 Dead series was just my favorite.